Hi everyone, my name is THANISSARA and I'm really delighted to be with you now to contemplate the Dharma together. So first of all, I'd like to begin with a teaching that I find very helpful and meaningful from my core teacher, which is Ajahn Chah, who was a Thai forest monk that was very influential in the starting up of many monasteries and centers in the West. He said, "First one learns Dharma, but does not yet understand it. Then one understands, but has not yet practiced. One practices, but has not yet seen the truth of the Dharma. Then one sees Dharma, but one's being has not yet become Dharma." So one may study, understand, practice, and see Dharma, but to actually be Dharma is something quite difficult. From hearing the Dharma all the way to seeing it, you will still have suffering, and you won't be free from unsatisfactory experiences until you are Dharma. Until you are Dharma, your happiness still depends on external factors. You lean on them, you lean on pleasure, on reputation, on wealth and material things. You may have all sorts of knowledge, but this knowledge is tainted by worldliness and cannot release you from suffering. You are like a bird in a cage. However, when you are Dharma, it is a place that each individual can know for themselves. It is a place of no falsehood, of freedom. So in this teaching, Ajahn Chah lays out the journey for each of us from our first initiation and opening into the Dharma, learning about it, hearing the Dharma, being attracted to it, and then beginning the practice. And from that practice, the development of the Dharma, some realization, all the way to actually being Dharma. So it's a journey. It's a journey that it's in time and space, a journey that leads us onward, but it's also a journey that more profoundly and immediately leads us inward. And as we go more inward, that journey becomes more timeless. It's not so bound in time. So it's a paradox. It's both in time and it's timeless. And the nature of both the journey that takes us through time and space and the unfolding of the timeless Dharma is called the journey of path, the path activity. So in this teaching I'd like to do today is to lay out some of the structures of this path to help orientate us and land us in the framework and the territory of this journey that we undertake together. And it's helpful to have a conceptual framework, but to understand this is just a conceptual framework, and the point of it is to encourage us and guide us in our practice. The point of this path activity ultimately is to be liberated, to liberate the heart. And in Buddhist metaphor, this is called entering the stream. One way of talking about this is called entering the stream of Dharma, which is also similar to Ajahn Chah's being Dharma, entering the stream of Dharma. So this is a particular realization, it's a particular maturing in the practice. And entering the stream of Dharma comes about through relinquishment of a very fixed identity and being shaped by the sense of self, a view of self. It comes about through overcoming over-reliance on thinking that leads to doubt and speculation. So it shifts from a thought-based orientation to a more intuitive, awareness-based fulcrum within our lives. And it overcomes, as we enter the stream of Dharma, we see through, or we overcome over-reliance on rites and rituals as a means to awakening. This doesn't mean that rites and rituals don't have their place. They do. They're very important. But we let go of the idea if I do enough of this rite, enough of this ritual, if I have these customs and beliefs, these traditions and these views in place, and they're all correct, then I will somehow in time and in the future get to the right place. And that very premise that we're operating from actually undermines our ability to realize freedom here and now. So rites and rituals have a place, but we're not stuck to them. We understand they're a means, not an end in themselves. So when we overcome these or see through these premises, then one enters what's called entering the stream, which is, with the entering of the stream, there is what's called the taste of the amatta Dharma, which means the deathless Dharma, or the unconditioned, the signless. Sometimes the Buddha called this nibbana, the taste of which is peace. In deep peace, unshakable peace. We realize the unshakable heart. At that point, there is certain effects from that realization. It's said that there is the abandoning of envy and jealousy, and the way that we compare ourselves with others all the time and then locate our sense of self in comparison, in relationship to everyone else, which, as we all know, is quite stressful. And, we feel up or we feel diminished on that process of comparison. So that's abandoned. We abandon hypocrisy. We become this no falsehood, authentic, deeply authentic to what's true for ourselves, what's true in each situation. We abandon fraud, denigration, and domineering. We're not interested in manipulating people for our own ends anymore. So a different relationship starts to emerge. So this is some of the fruit of this journey, of this practice path, a fruit that we should actually all really aim for in this lifetime and can realize. Ajahn Chah said it's very important that we realize this fruit of stream entry, entering and being the Dharma. So just to say something about the path, which is very helpful in the original texts of the Buddha, recordings of the Buddha's teachings, it is said that the path activity in and of itself breaks up that which hinders our capacity for realization. So this is an important line, because often when we approach a path of awakening, we have the sense, I'm doing this, and it's like me. The sense of me has to do this big thing, be enlightened, whatever, however our metaphor for that is. And that becomes a tremendous burden for this sense of self. Either we get inflated, I'm doing this, aren't I great? Or we get completely crushed because it all seems so very difficult and endless. And if we, we feel, some difficult mood or situation, or we're struggling, then we feel that we give up. We feel we've lost the path. Without realizing, actually, it's not the me that's going to do this. It's the path activity. Our job is to understand that path activity and to apply it moment by moment, the best we can. And then that teaching goes on to say, as the path activity develops and matures, the fruit of that path activity, the fruit which is this entering the stream, being Dharma, liberation of the heart from greed, hatred, and delusion, and so on. There's different ways we talk about this, but as the fruit of that path ripens according to the law of Dharma, this means it has its own unfolding. It's not that we are able to control that, thank God. It's not an act of self that we, or from an egoic place, I am going to create this fruit and be a certain way. That's actually a false premise. The fruit of the path activity arises organically, like the fruit ripening on a tree. It's nature. According to the Dharma, one of the oldest translations of Dharma is nature, actually, the lawfulness of nature. It's a different timing, it's a different unfolding. So then this means that our job is really to develop the path activity. One of the other forest teachers, so there's a forest school of Thailand, also passed over, but a great teacher called Ajahn Tate said this path is to know essentially the difference between mind and activity of mind. So this is a very important distinction here that is at the heart of a Buddhist teaching, which is the recognition of translation in English mind. The original text, it's called citta, C-I-T-T-A, citta, which also has a connotation of heart, mind, heart. It's the basic fundamental nature of, it's talking about the basic fundamental nature of consciousness, actually. Mind, fundamental nature of mind is it's conscious. It has this Buddhic, Buddhi, which means to know. It has this knowingness, this unobstructed radiancy, knowingness, wakefulness. So the nature of the citta is already liberated, it's already free, already has this nature, and then there's that which obstructs the knowing of that, the realization of that which comes to obstruct, that which comes through the mind, the different experiences, phenomena, feeling, mind states, bodily experience, sensation, the narratives that we live through, the shapings of the self. All of this arises and passes within the field of awareness. So that's the activity of mind. So we begin to discern there's the activity, and then there's the ground of the mind, which we could say is pure knowing. So the path activity helps us to begin to discern the difference. So what is this path? Again, I'd like to draw from the original text. There's many different ways of talking about this path. There are many different ways into path, not only from a Buddhist perspective, but many other spiritual teachings. From a Buddhist perspective, path is defined in a very can be defined in a very simple way, and traditionally is defined in a very simple way in three aspects. And these three aspects are the cultivation of what's called ethics or sila. It's a purification of body, mind, and heart through ethical, skillful behavior and the relinquishment of unskillful intentionality and behavior action. That's the foundation. The middle part of the path is called samadhi, which is the cultivation of meditation. And we can look at this word in a minute. It's a very important aspect, and it's a lot of what many of us are interested in. This is cultivation of a way of entering into this deeper knowing, this Buddhic knowing, through not through the thinking so much, but through the transcendence of thought, through getting thought in perspective and knowing there is a dimension beyond thinking, which is this conscious awareness that we realize and deepen our rootedness in. And then the third, from samadhi, when samadhi is the gathering mind, body, heart into awareness, when that is matured, when that becomes more stable, or even just in small moments of gathering, one doesn't have to have very deep samadhi for this. There is then the flowering of the third aspect of the path, which is called panya, which means wisdom or insight, seeing into the nature of reality, seeing clearly, being freed from delusion. We could say then the fruition of that wisdom, the activity of wisdom, like the activity of a Buddha, is there is a certain activity that comes and emerges from wisdom, which is compassion, compassionate activity in the world. So these are the different aspects of path, and each of these aspects can be consciously cultivated, and we're encouraged to cultivate these in our lifetime. The Buddha said, "I do not perceive even one thing that leads to such great harm and suffering as an undeveloped mind. And I do not perceive even one thing that leads to such great benefit and happiness as a cultivated mind." So again, this is the encouragement to use the path to cultivate the mind. And Ajahn Lee, as I was just saying now, this great Thai master, gave an analogy for this path, which is like a bridge that crosses a fast flowing stream. It has 3 pillars to support the bridge. So the pillar on the near side is the practice of sila or ethics, right action, right livelihood, and so on. The pillar on the far bank of the river is wise seeing, insight. The pillar that in the middle of the bridge that goes right down through the fast-flowing currents of the water is samadhi, practice of meditation. And in many ways, this is Ajahn Lee saying, it's that middle pillar that is in some ways the most challenging. You know, ethics, at least cognitively, we can understand that, we can practice that. Wisdom, we can have some wise reflection on the nature of things, but this cultivation of samadhi is takes a lot of patience because we're going against the fast currents of the mind, the mind just goes according to its conditioning and its habit. It sort of just runs out everywhere.